School nutrition program is a vital part in the basic education school system. The program caters for needy learners from the vulnerable backgrounds through the provision of a healthy meal at school. The aim is to promote punctuality, regular school attendance and improving the concentration of learners. However, late 2024, there have been incidents of suspected food poisoning at schools that has seen dozens of learners hospitalized, which begs the question of safety in school premises. Now, we have roped in a National Department of Basic Education spokesperson, Mhlanga. He joins us now via video link to outline the plans to ensure safety and compliance in the schools' feeding schemes. Elijah, a very good afternoon to you. Perhaps before we speak about the program itself, against the backdrop of the high level of foodborne cases that we've seen in the country, that have essentially resulted in the death of over 40 people nationwide, most of them children. Just unpack the plans the department has in place ahead of the 2025 academic year, especially as it concerns those outside the feeding scheme that are feeding the children at schools.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nati, for the question. It gives us an opportunity to outline our plans. The plan is to raise awareness to parents, guardians, caregivers, because it is their children who are exposed to the danger. It is them who give them money, which they use to buy food items, snacks, on their way to school and back home, or during breaks outside school premises. So it is the snacks that really has a problem, because we do not know where it comes from. But the food items that we serve our learners through the school nutrition program, we know where that is coming from. And we have a long established protocol in which we verify all the supplies and that we ensure that these are healthy meals. So we are going to be embarking on a public advocacy campaign to be led by the minister herself. And of course, the Deputy Minister will be part of that together with MECs to talk and raise awareness among our school communities to make sure that we conscientize, particularly our children, to make sure that they avoid the tragedies that we have seen in 2024, where families have been grieving following the loss of lives of children of school-going age. We don't want to see any of that occurred in 2024. In 2025, really, it's something that we should all work together with all stakeholders to ensure that we put a stop to the unnecessary loss of life.
Let's talk then about the school nutrition program. I mean, we know that government spent about 8.4 billion rand in the 2022-2023 financial year on nationwide school feeding scheme. Now, recent data provides a breakdown as well as, you know, how spending has shifted over the years. Perhaps talk to us about, you know, the school feeding scheme as a whole nationwide, and just the thinking behind that and how it has really shaped, particularly from a learning perspective for children.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting observation to make in terms of the benefits that we see accruing to communities, especially the vulnerable ones who are not able to feed their children. And through the school nutrition program, we are able to provide a safety net for the impoverished families who are happy to send their children to school because they know they will get meals. That is very important for us because it's a social security that we are able to provide to learners within school premises before we even teach them. Teaching them is our constitutional obligation, but of course we have to play a greater role of child protection in whatever way that we can. For more than 20 years now, we have been providing these consistent meals to 9 million children or more. The latest statistics that we have indicate that the beneficiaries have grown to about 9.6 million children who are in our 24,000 schools. And these are meals that they would otherwise not have because most families depend on these meals that they get in school. And we know this because during COVID, there was a huge outcry about where the children were going to eat because movement was not allowed. We know there was a court case which argued for the children who were not going to benefit because of the COVID restrictions. So that emphasizes the importance of this particular program that the government is providing. Yes, you said about 8 billion, but Treasury has now told us that it's growing to 10 billion rand because the population is also growing, but also we're expanding the beneficiary list because there are more and more learners now who are falling out of the provision of their families because of unemployment and other circumstances that are making them vulnerable.
And just talk to us about just some of the concerns that have been raised by the newly appointed, I can still say, Basic Education Minister, Sivuye Gwahube, in as far as the school nutrition program is concerned. I mean, some of the questions that she raised was, just the distribution system itself in terms of who and how many players can actually be involved, and also how many children actually benefit from the feeding scheme itself. What are some of those contentious issues that are still, are surrounding the nutrition program, and what's the way forward in as far as that is concerned?
Yeah, so what we do in the sector, we monitor everything that we do, and the school nutrition program is one of those key programs that we monitor. Yeah. So we have found that we are not really efficient in terms of the provision of meals and the cost to it. There are leakages in some parts. We find that there are some service providers who are overcharging in some items, even though the learners are able to eat, but we believe that the costing thereof should be done differently. And we have consistently been looking at efficient ways of providing these meals to the extent that the department came up with a new approach, saying that perhaps we need now to find a centralized approach where there will be a project manager to ensure that we standardize the prices of the meals, taking into account economics of scale. If we were to buy bulk and distribute to every province, to every district, every circuit providing to every school where they are. All of this was being done to try create efficiencies so that we're able to save some money to enable us to then provide more meals to more learners more often. And of course, when the new administration came into power, the process was already underway. So the tender process had just started when the minister was also appointed. So she felt that she needed to be briefed about the tender because it was a huge amount of money. And she said, let's rather pause the process, get back to the drawing board and look at the system. What are we proposing? Is it going to work? Who are the possible suppliers? And is this model the best that we can have? And those are the matters that are still subject to discussion at the moment. She wanted to inform herself so that she's able to support that which would have been part of starting as well, even though the process of revamping the system had already been underway before she came in. But she felt that now that she's the minister and there is such a huge program that she's responsible for, she needed to be fully conversant with all the technical aspects of it. So the National School Nutrition Program is a function of DBE. That's why it's called the National School Nutrition Program. So the monies that are allocated to provinces come directly from DBE. So the minister has an oversight role. She has a monitoring role as well. That's why she needs to know every detail. And it is in that context, therefore, that she thought she needed to pause the process, be part of the discussions until such time that she's satisfied, then we can go back to advertise it for tender again.
All right, so let's talk then about the numbers. And of course, these would be numbers that are of concern. You speak about the possibility of it going to around 10 billion rand in as far as that tender is concerned. How many children are we talking about here, and how many schools will be impacted? And when exactly are we going to then start seeing the green light as of 2025 curriculum?
Yeah, so what is happening is that the current provisioning model will continue. Provinces will continue to procure services from suppliers in the different parts of the country and making sure that every school gets supplies for their children. and that there's no disruption to the feeding. What we are doing, however, is to look at a different model at the same time without stopping the one that's already underway.
Okay.
And one of the things that the minister said we could do is perhaps pilot it in one part of the country. That's just one of the discussion points on the table at the moment. But we're feeding 9.6 million children in about 20,000 schools because the other schools are able to create funding for their own children. They're able to feed them. But we know that there are many more children now who need feeding, who need support from school. So that's what we are doing. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that every child in every part of the country who is deserving gets their meal every day, because it helps the education system by reducing absenteeism, making sure that children are healthy and are able to focus on their schoolwork, and that they're able to progress from grade to grade so that they're able to finish schooling and proceed with their future plans.
Yeah, perhaps allay some fears, particularly to parents in KwaZulu-Natal. We've seen some problems there, and we know, of course, the bulk of the schools that are within the system are in KwaZulu-Natal. We saw recent awards also being given to some of the districts that have been managing this particular program well. Just talk to us about is everything above board, and is everything ready then, for the 2025 school curriculum in as far as especially KwaZulu-Natal is concerned?
Yeah, KZN is going through some serious financial challenges. We are engaged with them to understand the situation. We have also invited the Provincial Treasury to take part in those discussions. National Treasury has participated as well. We are looking at the ways in which we can assist the province. They have also tabled just a few weeks ago a report to the minister for her consideration to see what measures can be put in place to support the province. The Department of Education itself is doing its best to reprioritize, put in place cost containment measures to keep the province afloat, to keep education services going. And we are pleased that KZN was one of the provinces that were able to pay their markers before Christmas for the December marking period, and they are able to also continue with the business of teaching and building schools and doing all the other work that is required for education to continue. So that work is continuing, but of course we are keeping our eye on their finances and ready to do whatever that we can to support them. We know that the process will take some time and that there shouldn't be quick results expected, but what is pleasing and satisfying at the moment is the fact that the province is able to continue with its business. Yes, there are serious financial and budgetary constraints that we are seeing as a country as a whole, and we are working with National Treasury and the Minister of Finance in that regard. But we are happy that at least the doors of learning are open in KZN, and that learners continue to go to school. Not all services are fully operational because we know there are shortages when it comes to learner transport and all those types of services, but to a large degree KZN is afloat and it's able to continue with the business.
And finally, Elijah, before I let you go, of course, recently President Cyril Ramaphosa announcing and authorizing the full implementation of the Bella Act. Just your concerns around the implementation of these across all schools in the country. Are we likely to see any problems, ahead of the schools opening?
Not at all. The education system functions in a phased way. We don't do everything all at once. So you have over 50 clauses in the Bella Act. We are not going to implement everything all at once. Some are minor changes, others are major. So preparations are required. For example, take the grade R. It's now official as a school starting grade, but there's no funding for it. There's no funding because there was no law providing for such funding to be set aside by National Treasury. So there is no way that we can say there will be full implementation of grade R in our school come January 2025. We still need to work through the detail of the implementation. We still need to develop regulations that will govern how we implement the different provisions in the Act. So there is still some work to be done, but it was critical that the President made the announcement that he has made, because the system needed that official go-ahead for it to be able to proceed with the next phase in the preparations for the full implementation. But we are satisfied that after about 8 years of work, we are where we are now. We've worked so hard as a sector with all our stakeholders, and we thank each and every one of them who participated, whether in support or raising concerns and some opposing. But it has been an open, transparent, democratic process which has taken us to where we are now. So the next thing that we're going to do is to make sure that each and every one of our stakeholders, they know their role in the implementation of this new law that we now have.
Yeah. And I mean, just on that note, have you received any form of concerns, from parents, school governing bodies, in as far as that is concerned? I would imagine that a number of discussions or roundtables will also be held with those stakeholders, the direct guardians of most of the learners in this country.
Well, we've been engaging with them for 10 years. They were part of the process for 10 years. We met in public, we met in private, we engaged verbally, we engaged in writing, we met in parliament, we met outside parliament, we met in the NCOP, we met in the communities when the process was moving from province to province. So they have been part of the process, and we engage with our stakeholders on a monthly basis. The Director General does that, the Minister herself does that. So no one will say they don't know what's taking place. They are very organized. We have the National Associations of School Governing Bodies, and they come in different shapes and forms, which means each and every SGB is part of the process. We have all the teacher unions, they are part of it. We meet with civil society. So there's no one who would have been left out. And in this process, we also have political parties as well participating through the parliament process. So no one would come now with a new concern, because there's nothing new to deal with now. We are all anxious about implementation. We have already done our rounds with all the provinces, workshopped all the relevant officials responsible for implementation in all the provinces. We're done with that part. Now it's time to bring our stakeholders even closer as we prepare for implementation, because everyone now needs to monitor how we implement. But above monitoring, everyone must play their part. There are new provisions now that everyone must be educated about. So there shouldn't be any new concerns. This has been probably the longest legislation to remain hanging while consultation was happening in the history of South Africa's democracy. So people have been given repeated opportunities for them to express themselves. They've done that. We are here now. We thank the President for having taken us to where we are right now.
All right, we'll leave it on those words then. Everyone must play their part. Elijah, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Elijah Mhlanga is the National Department of Basic Education spokesperson, speaking to us there in the main about the safety as well as the compliance of the school feeding schemes nationwide. Also touching there on the Bella Act. Of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa now given authority for the full implementation of the Act.